Captain Jake Morrison looked out the window of his ship as they approached the massive space station. The Galactic Council station was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It floated in space like a metal city with lights blinking everywhere and ships coming and going constantly. "First time seeing it never gets old," said his pilot, Lieutenant Sam Parker, as he guided their ship toward the docking bay. Jake nodded but felt nervous. He'd been to the station before, but today felt different. Today, Ambassador Lisa Carter would present Earth's latest proposal to the Council. And Jake had a bad feeling about how it would go. The Earth ship Harmony was small compared to the other vessels docked at the station, the Zephyrian Empire. Ships looked like floating fortresses, covered in weapons and armor. The hegemony vessels were made of some kind of crystal that sparkled in the station's lights. The architect ships were perfectly geometric, like someone had built them with a ruler and compass. Jake's ship looked plain and simple next to all of them. It was built for peace, not war. That had been Earth's choice when they joined the Galactic Council 3 years ago. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans came in friendship. "Docking complete, Captain," Sam reported. "Ambassador Carter is waiting in the meeting room." Jake made his way through the ship's corridors. The Harmony was clean and well-maintained, but it felt empty compared to the alien vessels they had seen. No fancy technology, no intimidating weapons, just a simple ship built by humans who wanted to explore the stars and make friends. He found Lisa Carter in the conference room, reviewing her notes one more time. She looked tired. Her usually perfect diplomatic appearance showed signs of strain. Dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking slightly as she turned the pages. "Ready for another round?" Jake asked, sitting down across from her. Lisa looked up and tried to smile. "As ready as I can be, though I have to admit, I'm not looking forward to it." "What's the proposal this time? Protected trade routes for smaller species? The big empires keep taking over shipping lanes and charging huge fees. Some of the smaller worlds can barely afford to trade with each other anymore." Jake frowned. "Sounds reasonable. What's the problem?" Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The problem is that the big empires make money from those fees. They're not going to give that up just because Earth asks nicely." They walked through the station's corridors toward the council chamber. The station was massive, with different sections built for different species. The Zephyrian areas had high ceilings and warm lighting. The hegemony sections were made of crystal and reflected light in strange patterns. The architect areas were all straight lines and perfect angles. The human section was small and simple. Just a few rooms with basic furniture and normal lighting. Jake always felt embarrassed when alien visitors saw how plain it was compared to their own areas. Other beings walked through the corridors with them. Zephyrians were tall and thin, with pale skin and large eyes. They moved with confidence, like they owned the place. The hegemony beings were harder to describe, their crystal, bodies shifting and changing color as they moved. The architects looked like walking machines, all metal and circuits. Most of them ignored Jake and Lisa completely. A few looked at them with what might have been amusement. Jake heard one Zephyrian say to another, "Look, the pets are going too." The council meeting again. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. She had heard worse over the past 3 years. The council chamber was enormous, with seating for hundreds of delegates. Most of the seats were empty today, as usual. The big empires only sent their representatives when there was something important to discuss. Earth's proposals were apparently not important. High Commander Vexaria of the Zephyrian Empire sat in the center of the main platform. He was even taller than most of his species, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to look right through. People, next to him, sat Prime Crystal Morthok of the Hegemony, its body shifting between blue and green colors. The architect representative was simply called Unit 47, a collection of metal parts that somehow moved and talked like a living being. "Ah, the humans have arrived," Vexaria announced as Jake and Lisa entered. "How delightful. What entertainment do you have for us today?" Lisa walked to the speaker's platform with dignity. She had done this many times before, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. She activated the holographic display and began her presentation. "Honored delegates, I come before you today to propose the establishment of protected trade routes for smaller member species. Currently, many worlds are isolated from galactic commerce due to excessive transit fees and restricted access to shipping lanes. She showed charts and data explaining how the current system hurt smaller worlds and limited their growth. Presentation was well prepared and made perfect sense. Jake watched the alien delegates as she spoke. Vextheri looked bored. He examined his fingernails and occasionally glanced at his communication device. Prime Crystal Morthok's colors shifted to what Jake had learned meant amusement. Unit 47 simply stared ahead without moving. When Lisa finished, the chamber was quiet for a moment, then Vextheri began to laugh. It was a cold, mocking sound that echoed through the chamber. "My dear human," he said, standing up, "do you really think we're going to give up profitable shipping routes just because you asked? Nicely? How charmingly naive." Prime Crystal Morthok's colors shifted to bright yellow. "The little mammals think they understand galactic commerce. How adorable. Biological entities demonstrate limited understanding of economic principles," Unit 47 added in its mechanical voice. Lisa's hands were shaking now, but she kept her voice steady. "The current system violates the Council's own charter regarding free trade and equal access. The charter," Vextheri said, "is interpreted by those with the power to interpret it. And humans, my dear pet, have very little power here." "Other?" Delegates began to laugh. Jake felt his face getting hot, but he forced himself to stay calm. Lisa had told him many times that losing his temper would only make things worse. Furthermore, Vextheri continued, perhaps if humans spent less time playing with fire and more time learning advanced technology, you might have something valuable to contribute to this discussion. The laughter got louder. Jake saw Lisa's face turn red, but she maintained her diplomatic smile. She had been doing this for months, always responding to insults with patience and measured words. "I understand your concerns," Lisa said carefully. "Perhaps we could schedule a working group to discuss the details." "A working group," Morthok said, its colors shifting to bright orange. "Yes. Let's form a committee to study the committee that studied the last committee. That should keep the humans busy for a few more years." More laughter filled the chamber. Jake had heard enough. He stood up and walked out, afraid of what he might say if he stayed. Lisa would have to handle this on her own. He waited in the corridor outside the chamber. 20 minutes later, Lisa emerged, her diplomatic mask still in place, but her hands trembling more than ever. "How did it go?" Jake asked, though he already knew. "They formed a subcommittee to review the proposal. It will report back in 18 months. They walked back toward their ship in silence. When they reached the docking bay, Lisa finally let her mask slip. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. 3 colonies, Jake. 3 human colonies destroyed by Zephyrian mining operations in the past month. All accidents, they say. All unfortunate mistakes." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Mining accidents. That's what they call them. "Oops, we didn't know anyone lived there. Oops, our sensors malfunctioned. Oops, we thought the planet was uninhabited." "And the Council?" "The Council expresses its deepest regrets and promises to investigate. The investigation will take years. Of course, meanwhile, more accidents will happen." Jake helped Lisa aboard the ship. She looked exhausted, defeated. 3 years of diplomatic patience, and this is what they had to show for it. Later that night, Jake sat in his quarters composing. A coded message to Earth. The words came slowly, but he knew they were important. "The kid gloves approach isn't working. They see our kindness as weakness. The situation is getting worse, not better. We need to consider other options." He sent the message and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were being destroyed by aliens who thought humans were too weak to fight back. Somewhere out there, people were dying because Earth had chosen to be polite. Jake wondered how long that politeness would last. Dr. Alina Rodriguez stared at the computer screen in her laboratory aboard the research station orbiting Earth. The data she was looking at made her stomach turn. She had been studying the debris from the 3 destroyed human colonies for weeks, and what she found was not what everyone expected. The pieces of metal, rock, and other materials told a story, but it was not the story the Zephyrians wanted people to believe. Alina had found traces of weapons fire, burn marks that could only come from military-grade plasma cannons, and metal fragments that showed signs of deliberate targeting. This wasn't an accident, she whispered to herself, then louder to her assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh. Kevin, look at this. Kevin walked over to her workstation. He was young, fresh out of the academy, and still believed that most aliens were basically good people. Alina had believed that too once. See these burn patterns? Lena pointed to the holographic display. They're too precise, too focused. Mining equipment doesn't make marks like this. Kevin studied the data, but why would they lie? What would they gain from destroying our colonies? Lena pulled up another file. I think they were testing their weapons. Look at the progression of damage across the 3 colonies. Colony Alpha was hit with basic plasma fire. Colony Beta was hit with something stronger. Colony Gamma was completely vaporized. You think they were seeing how much firepower it takes to destroy a human settlement? I think they were seeing how much firepower it takes to destroy a human settlement without leaving obvious evidence. Kevin sat down heavily in a chair. We need to tell someone about this. Lena nodded. I'm sending this to Commander Brooks. Right now. Commander Ryan Brooks received Elena's report while he was reviewing intelligence files at Earth Defense Force headquarters. He had been expecting bad news, but this was worse than he thought. The destroyed colonies were not accidents. They were experiments. But Elena's report was not the only bad news that day. Agent Maria Santos had just returned from an undercover mission to the Rimworlds, and what she had discovered made the colony attacks look small. Sir, Maria said as she entered Brooks' office, we have a bigger problem than we thought. Brooks looked up from Elena's report. How much bigger? The hegemony has been taking human settlers from the outer colonies, not killing them, taking them. They're being used as test subjects. Brooks felt his blood run cold. Test subjects for what? Medical experiments. The hegemony wants to understand human biology. They're particularly interested in our ability to heal from injuries and resist diseases. Maria activated her portable holographic display. Images appeared showing human beings in crystal cages connected to strange machines. The people looked sick, weak, and scared. How many? Brooks asked. At least 3,000 that we know of, probably more. Brooks stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of Earth's cities, millions of people living their lives in peace. They had no idea that thousands of their fellow humans were being tortured by aliens who saw them as laboratory animals. Have you reported this to the Galactic Council? Yes, sir. Ambassador Carter filed a formal complaint 2 days ago. And they're forming a committee to investigate. Investigation will take 6 months to a year. Brooks turned back to Maria. In 6 months, those people will be dead. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, Lisa Carter was dealing with her own problems. The formal dinner was supposed to be a cultural exchange, a chance for different species to share their food and customs. Lisa had been looking forward to it, thinking it might help build better relationships with the other delegates. She should have known better. The dinner was held in the station's main dining hall, huge room with tables designed for different species. The Zephyrian table was tall and narrow. The hegemony table was made of crystal and reflected light in strange patterns. The architect table was perfectly geometric, with precise angles and measurements. The human table was small and simple, stuck in a corner where most people wouldn't notice it. Lisa arrived wearing her best diplomatic dress, a simple but elegant, a blue outfit that represented Earth's oceans. She carried a small gift for each of the other delegates, handmade items from Earth that showed human craftsmanship. The other delegates were already seated and eating. Nobody stood up to greet her, which would have been polite. Instead, they watched her approach like she was some kind of entertainment. Ah, the human has arrived, said Sub-Commander the Chimera, one of Vextheri's assistants. We saved you a special meal. Lisa smiled and took her seat. A servant brought her a plate of food that looked normal enough, some kind of meat, vegetables, and a sauce that smelled strange but not unpleasant. She took a bite and immediately felt something wrong. The food tasted bitter, with a metallic aftertaste that made her tongue tingle. Within seconds, she felt nauseous and dizzy. Lisa had studied alien biochemistry as part of her diplomatic training. She knew that some alien foods contained compounds that were toxic to humans. The tingling in her tongue and the nausea were warning, signs that she was being poisoned. But she also knew that accusing the other delegates of trying to poison her would cause a diplomatic incident. Earth could not afford to make enemies of the major powers, not yet. So she set down her fork and smiled. "I'm sorry, but I'm feeling a bit under the weather today. I think I should stick to human food for now." The other delegates laughed. Not the polite laughter of people who understood, but the cruel laughter of people who thought they were clever. "Too primitive to appreciate sophisticated cuisine," said Prime Crystal Morthok, its color shifting to bright yellow with amusement. "Perhaps humans should stick to eating plants and simple animals," added Unit -47. Lisa maintained her smile, but inside she was furious. They had deliberately tried to poison her, then mocked her for not eating the poisoned food. It was not just rude, it was an act of war, disguised as a dinner party. She excused herself early and returned to her quarters. Once she was alone, she allowed herself to be sick. The small amount of poison she had consumed made her vomit for an hour. She spent the rest of the night in bed, feeling weak and dizzy. The next morning brought news that made everything worse. A message arrived from Earth Defense Force with an emergency priority code. Lisa read it with growing horror. A human medical transport ship. The Mercy had been intercepted by a Zephyrian patrol fleet. The ship was carrying medical supplies to a colony that was fighting a plague outbreak. Without the supplies, thousands of people would die. The Zephyrian commander, Captain Zelmoth, had demanded the entire cargo as a transit tax. When the human captain, Dr. Matt Harrison, protested that the supplies were desperately needed to save lives, Zelmoth had laughed and said that was not his problem. Dr. Harrison had been forced to choose between fighting the patrol fleet and condemning his own people to death, or giving up the supplies and condemning the colony to death. He chose to surrender the supplies. Lisa sat in her quarters, staring at the message. 3,000 humans enslaved by the hegemony. 3 colonies destroyed by the Zephyrians.
Poison served at it.
Toyin served at a diplomatic dinner.
Medical supplies stolen from us.
Plague victims, and the Galactic Council's response to all. Of this was to form committees and promise investigations that would take years to complete. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Captain Morrison entered, followed by Commander Brooks and Dr. Rodriguez. They all looked grim. "We got your message about the dinner," Brooks said, "along with everything else that's been happening. They're testing us," Alina said. "The colony attacks, the kidnappings, the poisoning, the medical supply theft. They want to see how much we'll take before we fight back. So far," Jake added, "we've taken everything they've thrown at us." Lisa looked at her friends and colleagues. These were good people, people who believed in peace and diplomacy, people who had spent years trying to build bridges between Earth and the galaxy. "They think we're weak," she said quietly. "Are we?" Brooks asked. Lisa thought about the question. Earth had chosen the path of peace when they joined the galactic community. They had built ships for exploration, not war. They had trained diplomats, not soldiers. They had offered friendship to species that saw them as prey, but was choosing. Peace the same as being weak? "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But I know we can't keep doing this. We can't keep smiling while they hurt our people." "What are you suggesting?" Jake asked. Lisa stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see alien ships coming and going from the station. Ships that belonged to species that saw humans as amusing pets or useful test subjects. "I'm suggesting that maybe it's time they learned something about us, something they don't expect, which is," Lisa turned back to her friends. For the first time in months, she felt something other than frustration and sadness. She felt angry, and the anger felt good. "They think we're weak because we choose to be peaceful. They think we're primitives because we don't have their advanced technology. They think we're helpless because we haven't fought back. And maybe it's time we showed them the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight." The 4 humans looked at each other. They'd all reached the same conclusion at the same time. The diplomatic approach was not working. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship as it approached the Galactic Council station. Behind her, 30 Earth vessels moved in perfect formation. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal diplomatic escort. The ships were smaller than the massive alien warships, and their designs looked simple and clean. The alien observers had no idea what they were really looking at. "Admiral," said Commander Pete Davis, her tactical officer, "we're receiving docking instructions from the station." "Follow them exactly," Kate replied. "We want to look like we're following all the rules." As the Earth fleet docked, alien sensors scanned the human ships. The scans showed what they expected to see: light armor, basic weapons, simple technology. The readings were carefully designed to be boring and unthreatening. None of the alien scanners detected the real weapons hidden behind false bulkheads, or the advanced technology that had been disguised to look primitive, or the fact that each simple Earth ship could destroy vessels 3 times its size. Kate walked through the station corridors with her escort. Other beings moved out of their way, but not out of respect. They moved like people avoiding a small animal that might bite their ankles. Kate had seen that look before, during her years as a diplomatic attaché. It was the look of people who found humans amusing but not important. That was about to change. The council chamber was fuller than usual. Word had spread that Earth was bringing a new fleet to the station, and the major powers wanted to see what the humans were up to now. Most of the alien delegates looked bored or mildly curious. High Commander Vextheri sat in his usual place, looking as arrogant as ever. Prime Crystal Morthok's colors shifted between blue and green, which meant it was feeling entertained. Unit 47 simply stared ahead with its mechanical eyes. Kate walked to the speaker's platform. Unlike Ambassador Carter, who had always looked nervous and hopeful, Kate moved with the confidence of someone who had nothing to fear. She wore her Earth Defense Force uniform, dark blue with silver insignia that marked her as one of Earth's highest-ranking military officers. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I bring a message from Earth's government and people." Vextheri looked up from his communication device. "Another proposal, Admiral? Another request for the Council to consider human feelings?" Kate smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. "No, Commander. This is not a request. This is a statement." She activated the holographic display. Instead of charts and graphs, it showed images of destroyed human colonies, enslaved human settlers, the medical transport that had been robbed of supplies meant to save lives. "For 3 years, Earth has been patient. We have followed your laws while you have ignored your own. We have offered friendship while you have shown us contempt. We have chosen peace while you have chosen to prey on our people." Murmurs began to spread through the chamber. This was not the usual human approach. Kate's tone was hard, angry, and completely unafraid. "We have been kind to you," Kate continued. "We have been respectful. We have been diplomatic. But you have mistaken our choice to be peaceful for an inability to be dangerous." Vextheri stood up, his face showing irritation. "What exactly are you threatening, human?" Kate's smile grew wider. "I'm not threatening anything, Commander. I'm simply informing you that our patience has run out. We have tried to be your friends. Now we're going to show you what we do to bullies." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates from various species began shouting about human arrogance, human stupidity, and human weakness. Kate waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "Your first lesson begins now." As if on cue, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices announced a security alert. The alien delegates looked confused and concerned. Kate's communication device chirped. She answered it calmly, while the entire council chamber watched. "Admiral Sullivan here." "Mission accomplished, ma'am," came the voice of Captain Morrison. "The package has been delivered. Any problems?" "None, ma'am. Target was exactly where intelligence said it would be." Kate closed the communication and looked at the alien delegates. "That was Captain Morrison reporting the successful completion of our first operation. A hegemony slave transport carrying 300 human prisoners has been liberated." Prime Crystal Morthok's colors shifted to bright red. "Impossible. IR. Ships are too well defended."
"House, your ship is now space debris," Kate replied.
Your crew is in escape pods with a note attached. The note says, "Return stolen property to sender." The chamber fell silent. Kate continued speaking into the shocked quiet. Transport was carrying humans who had been kidnapped from outer colonies for medical experiments. They are now free. In returning to Earth space, the slavers responsible are being delivered to this station for trial. Sub-Commander Thekmer jumped to his feet. You attacked a council member's vessel. This is an act of war. No, Kate said calmly. This is an act of justice. The hegemony violated council law by enslaving sentient beings. We simply enforce the law that you chose to ignore. Vexari's face was turning purple with rage. We'll be expelled from the council for this. Will we? Kate asked. On what grounds? For rescuing our own people from illegal slavery? For enforcing laws that you wrote but refused to follow? More alarms began sounding. Kate's communication device chirped again. Admiral, this is Commander Brooks. Second operation complete. The Zephyrian mining facility responsible for destroying our colonies has been shut down. Define shutdown, Commander. All equipment has been removed and relocated. The facility is now an empty shell, and we found their real mining records. The colonies they destroyed were deliberately targeted, not accidents. Kate looked at Vexaseri. Commander, it seems your people have been lying to the Council. The destruction of our colonies was not accidental. We have proof. Vexari's hand moved toward his weapon, but Kate's escort was faster. Commander Davis and his team had their weapons drawn before the Zephyrian could react. Said softly, my people are very good at what they do. The council chamber was in chaos now. Delegates were shouting, some calling for human blood, others demanding explanations. Through it all, Kate stood calmly at the speaker's platform, waiting for quiet. When the noise finally died down, she spoke again. You wanted to know what humans are capable of when we stop being nice. Today you learned the first lesson. We are very good at finding you, no matter where you hide. We are very good at taking things away from you. We are very good at rescuing our people from whatever cage you put them in. Prime Crystal Morthok's colors were shifting rapidly between red and black. The Council will not stand for this. Aggression. The Council, Kate replied, has been ignoring its own laws for years. We're simply enforcing them for you. Her communication device chirped a third time. Admiral, this is Captain Chen. Third operation complete. The Architect network intrusion has been neutralized. Kate raised an eyebrow. Neutralized how? They tried to hack our military computers. Bad mistake. We've been quietly mapping their entire network for the past 3 years. Every Architect facility in Council space is now cut off from their collective. Unit 47 suddenly stood up, its mechanical voice filled with something that might have been panic. Impossible. Our network security is impenetrable, your network security assumed. We were primitive, Kate replied. You forgot that we built our own computers from scratch. We know exactly how to break them. The chamber fell silent again. Kate looked around at the alien delegates, seeing fear in their eyes for the first time. For 3 years, you have treated us like children playing with toys. You forgot that we didn't become the dominant species on our planet by being weak. We became dominant by being smarter, more adaptable, and more determined than anything that tried to stop us. Vextheri was breathing heavily, his face twisted with rage. What do you want? We want you to follow your own laws. We want you to stop attacking our people. We want you to return every human you have enslaved. We want you to remember that we gave you every chance to do this the easy way. And if we refuse, Kate's smile was cold as winter. Then you'll discover what. The hard way looks like. She gestured to her escort and they began to leave the chamber. As they reached the door, Kate turned back. Oh, and one more thing. Those 30 ships you saw us arrive with are just the advanced scouts. The real fleet is still on its way. As the humans left the chamber, panicked voices filled the air. Delegates were shouting orders, demanding information, trying to understand what had just happened. For the first time in 3 years, no one was laughing at the humans. Back on her flagship, Kate stood in the command center watching status reports come in from across the galaxy. The operation had been a complete success. Human prisoners were being freed, stolen property was being returned, and the galaxy's bullies were learning that Earth was not as helpless as they had thought. Admiral Commander Davis said, We're getting reports of alien fleet movements throughout the sector. They're mobilizing for war. Kate nodded. Expected. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them Phase 1 is complete. The galaxy learned the true meaning of fear over the next 72 hours. What had seemed like isolated human attacks suddenly revealed themselves as part of a coordinated campaign that spanned dozens of star systems. Captain Lucy Chen stood on the bridge of her ship, the Retribution. As it approached the Zephyrian mining complex that had destroyed 3 human colonies, the facility was massive, protected by defense platforms and patrol ships. It looked impregnable. Sensors are showing 47 defense platforms and 23 patrol vessels, reported Lieutenant Tony Martinez, her tactical officer. They're hailing us, demanding we leave immediately. Lucy smiled grimly. Put them on screen. The face of a Zephyrian commander appeared on the main display. He was tall and pale, with the arrogant expression that seemed standard for his species.
Human.
Vessel, you are in violation of Zephyrian territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. This is Captain Chen of the Earth Defense Force, Lucy replied calmly. We're operating an illegal mining facility built on the ruins of destroyed human colonies. You have exactly 10 minutes to evacuate all personnel, the Zephyrian commander laughed. You think your pathetic little ship can threaten this facility? You have enough firepower to destroy a fleet. I'm not here to destroy your facility, Lucy. Said I'm here to take it apart piece by piece and broadcast the evidence of your war crimes to the entire galaxy. Possible. Our defenses are impenetrable. Lucy's smile grew wider. Your defenses are designed to stop ships trying to ram through them. They're not designed to stop ships that can appear and disappear at will. She cut the communication and turned to her crew. All right, people. Let's show them what we learned from 3 years of watching them. The Retribution vanished from the Zephyrian sensors. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The defense platforms began scanning frantically, their weapon systems searching for a target that no longer existed. Then the attacks began. The first defense platform simply stopped working. Its weapons went offline, its shields collapsed, and its crew found themselves locked in their own command center. The second platform suffered the same fate 30 seconds later. Then the third. Where are they? Screamed the facility commander. Find them. But the human ship was everywhere and nowhere. It would appear just long enough to disable another platform, then vanish again. The Zephyrian patrol ships fired blindly into empty space, hitting nothing but darkness. Within an hour, every defense platform was offline. The patrol ships had been disabled, their crews rescued and set adrift in escape pods. The facility itself was completely defenseless. That's when the real work began. Lucy's ship reappeared directly above the mining complex. But instead of firing weapons, it began using precise cutting beams to remove equipment. Massive mining extractors were carefully cut free and transported away. Processing plants were disassembled piece by piece. Even the administrative buildings were stripped of their computers and communication equipment. What are you doing? The facility commander demanded over the open channel. I'm confiscating evidence, Lucy replied. Every piece of equipment, every computer file, every communication record. The galaxy is going to see exactly what you did to our colonies. Within 12 hours, the mining facility was an empty shell. But Lucy's ship had recorded everything, including the facility's real mining records that showed the human colonies had been deliberately targeted and destroyed. The recordings were broadcast across the galaxy within minutes. Meanwhile, on the other side of Council space, the Architect Collective was discovering that their supposedly impenetrable network had become their greatest weakness. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in a secure bunker deep beneath Earth's surface, her fingers flying. Across holographic keyboards, around her dozens of other computer specialists worked at similar stations. They had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Network penetration is complete, reported Dr. Kevin Walsh. We have access to every Architect facility in the galaxy, Good Elena replied. Begin Phase 2. The Architect Collective had always believed that their shared consciousness made them invincible. Every member was connected to every other member. Through quantum communication links, they shared knowledge instantly, reacted to threats as a single organism, and coordinated their actions with perfect precision. But that strength was also their weakness. When the humans had pretended to be victims of computer attacks, the architects had eagerly tried to hack human military networks. They had expected to find simple, primitive systems that they could easily control. Instead, they had found a trap. The moment the architect networks touched the human computers, hidden programs began spreading through their systems like a virus. But these weren't destructive programs. They were much more subtle. "We're not going to hurt them," Alina explained to her team. "We're going to isolate them. Every facility, every ship, every communication node. They'll be alive and unharmed, but they'll be completely cut off from each other." For a collective consciousness, isolation was worse than death. Across the galaxy, architect facilities began going dark. Their quantum communication links were severed. Their shared databases were locked away behind unbreakable encryption. Their members found themselves alone for the first time in their existence. Unit 47. The architect representative on the SC Council began to malfunction as its connection to the collective was cut. It sat motionless in the council chamber, its mechanical voice repeating the same phrase over and over. "Connection lost. Connection lost. Connection lost." But the most dramatic confrontation was happening in the council chamber itself. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood before the assembled delegates. She was not the same woman who had endured months of mockery and abuse. Gone was the patient diplomat who had smiled while being poisoned and insulted. In her place stood someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "You made a critical error," she told the shocked delegates. "You mistook our civilization for weakness. You forgot that we didn't become the dominant species on our world by being peaceful. We became dominant by being the most adaptable, the most persistent, and the most creative when it comes to solving problems." Vexeri was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "You were declaring war on the entire galaxy." "No," Lisa replied. Calmly, "we are enforcing the law. Every action we have taken has been in response to crimes committed against human beings. Slavery, murder, theft, and attempted poisoning. All violations of council law that you chose to ignore. You cannot prove anything." Lisa smiled and activated the holographic display. The recordings from the mining facility filled the chamber, showing clear evidence of the planned destruction of human colonies. The images were damning, impossible to deny. "The evidence speaks for itself," Lisa said. 3 human colonies were deliberately destroyed. Thousands of innocent people were murdered. And you called it an accident. Prime crystal Morthox colors. We're shifting rapidly between red and black. The Council will not stand for this aggression. Council, Lisa replied, has been complicit in these crimes. You knew what was happening and chose to do nothing. So we did something. She gestured to the chamber's main display, which now showed tactical reports from across the galaxy. Human forces were active in dozens of systems, liberating prisoners, confiscating stolen property, and broadcasting evidence of alien crimes. For 3 years, we played by your rules. We filed complaints, formed committees, and waited for justice that never came. We were patient because we believed in the rule of law. We were kind because we believed in the possibility of friendship. She paused, looking directly at each of the alien delegates. But you taught us that in this galaxy, the law only applies to the weak. You taught us that kindness is seen as weakness. You taught us that the only way to earn respect is through fear. Vextheri's hand moved toward his weapon, but stopped when he saw Lisa's escort. Commander Brooks and his team had their weapons drawn and ready. I wouldn't, Lisa said softly. My people have been training for this moment for 3 years. They are very good at what they do. The Zephyrian commander's face showed something that might have been fear. What do you want? We want justice. We want every human prisoner returned. We want reparations for the destroyed colonies. We want the criminals responsible for these crimes to be punished. And we want guarantees that this will never happen again. And if we refuse... Lisa's smile was cold as space itself. Then you'll discover what happens when humanity stops playing by the rules. At that moment, another alarm began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices announced a priority alert. Admiral Sullivan, to all personnel, came a voice over the station's communication system. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching the Council station. Estimated arrival time 6 hours. The alien delegates looked at each. Other in panic? A massive fleet?
Ow!
Many ships did the humans have. Lisa watched their faces and felt a moment of satisfaction. For 3 years, they had underestimated humanity. They'd seen Earth's small diplomatic presence and assumed it represented their entire capability. They had been wrong. 6 months after the day the galaxy learned to fear humanity, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in what used to be the Galactic Council chamber. The room looked different now. The elevated platforms where the major powers had sat in judgment were gone. In their place were circular tables, where delegates from dozens of species sat as equals. The station itself had been renamed Haven, and it served as the headquarters for the new Galactic Justice Council. Instead of being ruled by the 3 most powerful civilizations, the galaxy was now governed by representatives from every member species. With decisions made by majority vote, Kate looked out through the observation windows at the ships docked. Around the station, Earth vessels made up the largest fleet, but there were also ships from the Corelli, the Vashtari, the Nexari, and dozens of other species that had been ignored or oppressed under the old system. "Admiral," said Captain Morrison, approaching with a data tablet, the morning reports. Kate took the tablet and scanned the information. The Zephyrian Empire had been reduced to a single star system, their vast territory redistributed to the species they had conquered. The hegemony's slave networks had been completely dismantled, with their leaders awaiting trial for crimes against sentience. The Architect Collective remained in isolation, their shared consciousness fractured into individual minds that were slowly learning to think for themselves. "Any problems?" Kate asked. "Minor ones? Some of the former slave worlds are having trouble adjusting to freedom. The Corelli are requesting help with rebuilding their infrastructure. The Vashtari want to establish trade agreements with Earth and the Big Three. The Zephyrians are still demanding the return of their territory, the hegemony is claiming. They were just following their cultural traditions. The architects are, well, they're still figuring out how to be individuals." Kate nodded. The transition had not been easy, but it had been necessary. The galaxy's old order had been built on the oppression of the weak by the strong. The new order was built on the principle that all sentient beings deserved respect and protection. It set up meetings with the Corelli and Vashtari representatives, Kate said, and keep monitoring the situation on the former slave worlds. She walked through the station's corridors, noting the changes that had been made. The human section was no longer small and tucked away in a corner. It occupied an entire deck, with facilities for Earth's diplomatic and military personnel. More importantly, every species now had equal space and equal representation. The corridor walls displayed screens showing news from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds were rebuilding their civilizations with help from Earth and other allied species. Trade routes that had been monopolized by the major powers were now open to all. Scientific research was being shared freely instead of being hoarded by the powerful. Kate stopped at one screen that showed a group of young beings from different species. Working together in a laboratory, they were developing new medical treatments that would benefit everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful. "It's working," said a voice behind her. Kate turned to see Lisa Carter approaching, wearing the uniform of the new Galactic Justice Council. "Some days I'm not sure," Kate replied. "We broke the old system, but building a new one is harder than I expected." Lisa smiled. "Democracy usually is. But look at what we've accomplished in just 6 months." She gestured to another screen showing a peaceful protest on a former hegemony world. The protesters were demanding faster trials for their former oppressors, but they were using legal channels instead of violence. "They're learning that they have rights," Lisa said. "They can demand justice without fear of being crushed." Kate nodded. "And the former powers are learning that they have responsibilities." They walked together toward the main conference room, where the daily council session was about to begin. The room was full of delegates from across the galaxy, representing species that had never had a voice in their own governance. At the center of the room sat three figures under guard. Former High Commander Vexeri of the Zephyrian Empire. Former Prime Crystal Morthok of the Hegemony in Unit 47. The former architect representative, Vexeri, looked older than he had 6 months ago. His pale skin had a gray tinge, and his eyes held the defeated look of someone who had lost everything. He was no longer the arrogant ruler who had mocked humans as pets. He was a prisoner awaiting judgment for war crimes. "The council will come to order," announced Speaker Yelinara, a Corelli, who had been elected to lead the new government. "We are here to continue the trials of the former leadership." Kate took her seat at the Earth delegation's table. As the leader of the military forces that had overthrown the old system, she had been offered a position as the new government's supreme commander. She had refused, insisting that no single species should hold that much power. Former High Commander Vexeri, Speaker Yelinara, continued, "You stand accused of ordering the destruction of 3 human colonies, resulting in the deaths of over 50,000 civilians. How do you plead?" Vexeri stood slowly, his once proud bearing was gone, replaced by the posture of a broken man. "I pled guilty," he said quietly. A murmur went through the chamber. This was the first time he had admitted to the crimes. "Why?" asked Delegate Morzin, of Ashtari, whose own world had been conquered by the Zephyrians decades ago. "Why did you order the destruction of civilian colonies?" Vexeri was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because we could. Because we thought they were weak. Because we believed that might made right. And now I know that we were wrong. The humans showed us what real strength looks like. It's not the ability to destroy the weak. It's the ability to protect them." Kate felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and pity. This was the being who had laughed at human suffering, who had treated them like amusing pets. Now he understood the difference between power and strength. Former Prime Crystal Morthok was next. Its crystalline body had lost much of its color, appearing almost gray in the chamber's lighting. The hegemony's practice of enslaving other species for medical experiments had resulted in the deaths of thousands of sentient beings. "I do not understand it," said when asked to explain its actions. "We needed to study other species to advance our knowledge. This was necessary for our survival." "The beings you enslaved were sentient," Speaker Yelinara replied. "They had the same right to life and freedom that you claim for yourself. But we are superior. We are more advanced. We have the right to use lesser beings for our purposes." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates from species that had been enslaved by the hegemony shouted accusations and demands for justice. Kate watched as Speaker Yelinara restored. "Order that attitude," the speaker said firmly, "is exactly why the old system failed. No species has the right to enslave another. No being has the right to use another as a laboratory animal. These are fundamental principles of justice." Unit 47 was the most difficult case. The Architect Collective had not directly harmed other species, but their attempts to hack human networks had triggered the response that led to their current isolation. The former collective consciousness was still struggling to function as an individual. "I do not understand individual responsibility," it said, its mechanical voice filled with confusion. "We acted as one.
Ow!
Can one be responsible for the actions of all?" "You chose to participate in the collective's actions," Kate said, speaking. "For the first time, you could have refused. You could have dissented, but you chose to go along with attempts to harm other species. We thought it was necessary. We thought it was right. And now," Unit 47 was silent for a long time. Finally it spoke. I think we were wrong. But thinking for myself is still difficult." The trials continued for hours. Evidence was presented, witnesses testified, and the former leaders were forced to confront the consequences of their actions. But Kate found herself thinking about the future rather than the past. After the session ended, she walked to the observation deck where Dr. Elena Rodriguez was waiting. Elena had been appointed as the new council's chief science advisor, overseeing the sharing of knowledge between species. "How are the integration programs going?" Kate asked. "Better than expected," Elena replied. "The former slave worlds are eager to learn new technologies. The Corelli are sharing their agricultural techniques. The Vashtari want to collaborate on medical research. Even some of the former Zephyrian colonies are asking to join the cooperation programs, and the resistance? Minimal. Most beings are happy to have a voice in their own governance. The ones who aren't happy are mostly the former oppressors, and they don't have much choice in the matter. Kate nodded. The transition had been remarkably smooth, considering that they had completely overthrown the galaxy's power structure. But she knew that was because the old system had been so unfair, that almost everyone was better off under the new one. There's something else, Elena said. We've been contacted by species from outside council space. They want to know if they can join the new government. How many? 17 so far. All of them are smaller civilizations that were afraid to join the old council because they knew they'd be prey for the major powers. Kate smiled. Send them the membership requirements.